All right, shalom, shalom, Shabbat, shalom, and greetings. Please let me know that you can hear me. Okay, I'm pretty certain you can, but I just want to check. So please put a one in the chat if you can hear me. Okay. Am I coming through clear? If someone could please let me know by putting the one in the chat. Mic check, mic check. Okay. Well, I'll assume I'm okay, right? If I don't hear, if I okay, already. Thank you, thank you. All right, so shalom, shalom, Shabbat, shalom. Welcome to Pursuits of Virtue in this segment where we do just that, right? Pursue virtue, a better understanding of what it is to be considered virtuous within the scriptures and transcend just knowledge or a religious practice, but to indeed be true. As you can see, today's title is True Leader is Servant, right? The true leader is servant. And I want to discuss exactly what that servitude is. What does it look like? And for people that may be endowed with, to some degree, influence, authority, notoriety to be known, right? How are we sure that we are true, right? How do we determine that? And I want to begin by reading a scripture that we all know very well, right? It's the words of our Lord, the Messiah, and it's the book of Matthew, chapter 23, verse 11, right? Matthew chapter 23, verse 11. And it reads, "But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted." So the true question is, what is service truly, right? What is work and labor for the benefit of those around you and truth? Most High willing, we're able to have a greater understanding of that today. So some people say, right, this is a quote that I found. This was actually in the book of Philo of Alexandria, and it reads, "Some people say that the last thing which the wise man puts off is the tunic of vainglory. For even if a man gets the mastery over his other passions, still he is inclined to be influenced by glory and praises of the multitude." And we know the Messiah, the truest example of leadership and servitude that we have in the scriptures, didn't desire such a reputation or such an esteem. And we would desire to follow in that same vein. So, in beginning the conversation, I want to think about it. You know, when we speak about servitude, right? True servitude, does that mean, right? Make like now, right? I'm sitting here on a platform, and it's easy to say, right? It's like, okay, right? I'm talking, people listening, and I could put this forth as servitude, right? Or it could be me going on a street corner with a microphone and showing everything that I know, right? Every scripture, reciting scriptures effortlessly, right? Remembering them and gaining quite a notoriety while doing that, right? Is that servitude? Is it, if I have an organization or whatever that is, people answering to my summoning and my beckoning call, right? And assisting me, and maybe, I cast down my countenance and or I treat people nicely. Is that servitude? I don't think it is. I don't think that's what is being conveyed when it says, "But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant." But that's why we're gonna speak about it today. So what I'll do today, I have a couple things I would like to go into, maybe read and common, right, practical examples. But I'll begin by going through some writing so we can get an example of exactly what it looked like. right, of exactly what it looks like, right? True leader is servant, because ultimately, um, as a man, you would desire, if called to, right, or whatever being I'm called to, or any person that the Most High would desire of you, you would just hope to be able to take it in truth. And if it does require what people would consider to be a leader, that you are worthy of it, right? The scripture tells us not to seek to be many masters, knowing that there is a greater requirement of those people. So I'm going to begin by sharing a PowerPoint, right? We'll go through some examples today. Okay. Let's see here. Right. True leader is servant. I'll share the link a little later. All right. True leader is servant. So we're gonna read a few things, maybe read a few articles and get an understanding of that, most high willing. Okay. Okay. All right. True leader is servant. All right. So we're going to start in the book of Josephus, right? And this is in regards to Samuel, right? Samuel, who was the high priest at the time, right? Antiquity of the Jews, book 6, chapter 2. This is Josephus, right? And it reads, but afterward, he found himself oppressed with old age and not able to do what he used to do. So he committed the government and the care of the multitude to his sons, the elder of which was called Joel, and the name of the younger was Abiah. He also enjoined them to reside and judge the people, the one at the city Bethel and the other at Beersheba, and divided the people into districts that should be under the jurisdiction of each of them. Now, these men, let me actually, let me, okay, right, okay. Now, these men afford us an evident example and demonstration how some children are not of the like dispositions with their parents, but sometimes perhaps good and moderate, though born of wicked parents, and sometimes showing themselves to be wicked, though born of good parents. For these men, turning aside from their father's good courses and taking a course that was contrary to them, perverted justice for the filthy lucre of gifts and bribes, and made their determinations not according to truth, but according to bribery, and turned aside to luxury and the costly way of living, so that, as in the first place, they practiced what was contrary to the will of God, so did they, in the second place, what was contrary to the will of the prophet, their father, who had taken a great deal of care and made a very careful provision that the multitude should be righteous, right? And that's in regards to Samuel. So his sons took advantage of what they inherited and were unjust in their rulership over the people, right? And continuing in Antiquity of the Jews, book 6, it says, but the people, upon these injuries offered to their former constitution and government by the prophet's sons, were very uneasy at their actions and came running to the prophet, who then lived at the city Ramah, and informed him of the transgressions of his sons, and said that as he himself was old already and too infirm by that age of his to oversee their affairs in the manner he used to do, so they begged of him and entreated him to appoint some person to be king over them, who might rule over the nation and avenge them of the Philistines, who ought to be punished for their former oppressions. These words greatly afflicted Samuel on account of his innate love of justice and his hatred to kingly government, for he was very fond of an aristocracy, as what made the men that used it of a divine and happy disposition. Nor could he either think of eating or sleeping out of his concern and torment of mind at what they said. But all the night long did he continue awake and revolved these notions in his mind, right? When Samuel had heard this, he called the Jews early in the morning and confessed to them that he was to ordain them a king. But he said that he was first to describe to them what would follow, what treatment they would receive from their kings, and with how many mischiefs they must struggle. For know ye, said he, that in the first place they will take your sons away from you, and they will command some of them to be drivers of their chariots, and some to be their horsemen, and the guards of their bodies, and others of them to be runners before them, and captains of thousands, and captains of hundreds. They will also make them their artificers, makers of armor, and of chariots, and of instruments. They will make them their husbandmen also, and the curators of their own fields, and the diggers of their own vineyards, nor would there be anything which they will not do at their commands, as if they were slaves bought with money. They will also appoint your daughters to be confectioners and cooks and bakers, and these will be obliged to do all sorts of work which women slaves that are in fear of stripes and torment submit to. They will besides this take away your possessions and bestow them upon their eunuchs and the guards of their bodies, and they will give the herds of your cattle to their own servants, right? And I think I'm cut off a little bit there. But in going back to the previous slide, it says that Samuel had an innate love of justice, right? And he had a hatred to kingly government, but he was very fond of an aristocracy, meaning what it would mean in later times was to be well born or of a noble birth, right? To be from an honorable family, knowing that you were raised up in a way to appreciate justice, that you would be fair, and that you would not only judge people as your own merchandise or to advance your own affairs, right? An innate love of justice or fairness, regardless of who it was in favor of, right? And that's what Samuel had. So he despised a kingly government. And at this time, amongst the children of Israel, it wasn't simply Levites or priests who inherited that leadership. That was something that was sort of being reformed back in. But if you remember, in the time of Judges, the warriors, the stronger men, right, they were being selected as leaders of the people. And so Samuel was grieved at this, right? And the first thing he said, well, when you transition to a kingly government, there will be people over you that will judge according to their own advancement, whereas in aristocracy, it's the judges are literal servants of welfare, right? And still being bound to certain rules and regulations, and not being able to go outside of that. So you see, Samuel had a reputation of judging the people correctly, but they desired this form of monarchy, right? And so continuing, okay, let me see here. Well, my screen cut off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it. I'm going to continue reading it. Right. So we're in Josephus chapter. We're in book 6. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I want to finish out before Samuel. Now, when Samuel was going to assign Saul, right? Because the question is, what is the service? What is the service, right? Because the conversation today that we're having is true leader is servant, right? So this is paragraph 5. And so when Samuel called the assembly, right, this is what he said. He said, then did Samuel the prophet call another assembly also, and said to them, I solemnly adjure you by God Almighty, who brought those excellent brethren, I mean Moses and Aaron, into the world, and delivered our fathers from the Egyptians and from the slavery they endured under them, that you will not speak what you say to gratify me, nor suppress anything out of fear of me, nor be overborne by any other passion, but say, what have I ever done that was cruel or unjust? Or what have I done out of lucre or covetousness or to gratify others. Bear witness against me. If I have taken an ox or a sheep or any such thing, which yet when they are taken to support men, it is esteemed blameless. Or have I taken an ass for my own use, or anyone to his grief? Lay some one such crime to my charge. Now we are in your king's presence. But they cried out that no such thing had been done by him, but that he had presided over the nation after a holy and righteous manner, right? So we're looking at Samuel, right? This was a leader. This was a person to where all luxuries and all opportunities were afforded to him. But he was able to say at the end of his reign, he was able to address a nation of people and say, anybody can come forth. There isn't anything that I can do to you. We have a king now present. Can anybody say that I've done that? No, but I've only served you. I've only been a benefit to you, right? And today we might hear similar sentiments, but we want to know exactly what it is. Is that merely me, coming up, reading different things here and or any person to come before and say, I know God or I understand him better than you all do. So come hear me. And this is the word. Is that the word, right? That's the conversation today. So true leader is servant. So I'm going to continue on a different passage, but I want to look at different leaders to where they have a report, a memorial for the ages to come, and how and I want to read and I want to explore how those memorials were established, right? What did they do? So we can truly understand the true spirit of what that means to be a servant. Okay, so this is Philo of Alexandria, and this is on the life of Moses. On the life of Moses. Okay, on the life of Moses, book 1. All right, and it reads, now there were 7 damsels whose father was the priest, and they all came to a certain fountain, leading their flocks, and having loosened their vessels and let them down by thongs, they succeeded one another in drawing up the water, so as for them all to have an equal share in the work. And in this way they cheerfully and rapidly filled the troughs which were at hand. And when other shepherds came up, they disregarded the weakness of the damsels and endeavored to drive them away with their flocks, and then brought their own herds to the drink that was prepared, desiring to reap the fruits of the labor of others. But Moses, seeing what was done, for he was at no great distance, hastened and ran up. And when he had come near to them, he said, will not you desist from behaving thus unjustly, thinking this solitary place a fitting field for the exercise of your covetousness? Are you not ashamed to have such cowardly arms and hands? You are long-haired people, female flesh and not men. The damsels behave like vigorous youths, hesitating about and nothing that they ought to do. But you young men are now behaving lazily like girls, right? So to get a better understanding of what's taking place, this is when Moses had already fled Egypt because he slew again, right? Standing in the stead of an innocent person or someone who was done wrong. And Moses in the authority that he had was so overcome with the truth within him that he operated by, that he stood up for someone else. We just read about Samuel, and it spoke of an innate love for justice, right? To where so much so to where he fled everything that he had in protection of another person. Now, in the middle of a desert in a strange land, Moses is just operating, living his life, right? Set in solitude in a solitary place. And simply he's just seeing something going on. 7 damsels, they're feeding, they're doing laborious work to be able to feed their cattle. And now men out in the desert in the middle of nowhere, right, are being unjust to them. So Moses sees this and it becomes his issue, right? That becomes his issue, to go stand and speak on behalf of innocent people. And regardless of the danger, come what may, right? And can and so in continuing that, he says, will you not depart? Will you not be off and give place to those who arrived first? So he's judging, right? He stepped in the place of judgment for protection of the innocent. In Proverbs 1, it speaks about to teach a young man wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity, right? Fairness, a man to be able to use rationale, right? To desire to be just, to desire fair judgment, to teach subtlety, right? Wisdom or cunning to a simple-minded person. So when we look at all of these men, and we know in the scriptures in Second Esdras, it says the truth is the most powerful thing, right? The truth is the most powerful thing. But I don't think that phrase alone does justice to what is actually being conveyed. But rather, it's saying if a man operates and according, if a man operates according to what is true, what is just, right? The truth is much more than just not lying, right? Truth is, the scripture even tells us that the earth was created in truth, meaning perfect balance, perfect proportion. When you read one of the books in Fourth Maccabees, if you ascribe to it or not, it speaks about how reason, but it says a reason will cause a man even that loves his wife to reprove her, right? It'll cause a man that even if he desires to eat a certain food, he won't because of reason. And it's pretty much saying the same thing when it says the truth is the most powerful thing, because you've seen many righteous men, Joseph, where he was cast down into prison, right? And he could have did the wrong thing, right? So in that case, it would have been the opposite of truth. And in that short moment, he could have been gratified or avoided trouble. Moses could have turned a blind eye when he killed them, but it was single-minded. This was the only way to go. This was the only way to operate in truth. So even in Second Esdras, it says wine is wicked, right? The king is wicked, meaning all of these things are weaker than when a man's actions actually meet the truth and are consistent with truth. And we see Moses, it's an innate love for justice. It's all the same thing, but in translation, these things can be given off differently. But you see, even in the middle of nowhere, Moses, he couldn't hold his tongue. What people say in the streets, crashing out, right? Like a gang member, that to where no matter what the consequences is, he has to operate according to a certain code, right? But this is in a righteous way. It's the same mindset, right? The truth is the most powerful thing. It would compel the Maccabean brothers to be tortured to not go against that innate love of justice or innate love of truth that we read about, that Samuel operated according to. And now we're reading about Moses, right? In the middle of nowhere, in the desert. Think about it. Put yourself, that would be equivalent to the wild, wild west, before the West in America was established with the normal American laws. And you'll hear about people going outside they get into an argument over a saloon, they shoot, and Moses could have died. But whatever came with it, Joseph cast down in a dungeon. But ultimately, the truth delivers a man, right? Or what some people might call fate, right? Then ultimately you'll see somebody on top. You see their story, you like, man, how would that have happened? But it was single-minded. There was no other way to operate but in truth, right? So in continuing reading, it says, will you not depart? Will you not be off and give place to those who arrive first, to whom the water belongs and who are entitled to it, when you ought rather to have drawn water for them, that so they might have had it in greater abundance? And are you, on the contrary, endeavoring to take away from them what they themselves have got ready? But I swear by the celestial eye of justice, which sees what is done even in the most solitary places, that you shall not take it from them. and that all events now justice has sent me and appointed me to bring them assistance who never expected such an officer. For I am an ally to these damsels who are thus injured by violence. And I come with the might which you evildoers and covetous people cannot face, but you shall feel it wounding you in an invisible manner if you do not change your ways. Right? In the scriptures in Second Esdras, it speaks about brother, you good, you got this. You need help. Okay. Okay. All right. So it says let me continue reading. It says so in Second Esdras 5, it speaks about the Most High's justice is like a ring, right? What some people would call karma in today's time, right? And it reads, I come with the might which you evildoers and covetous people cannot face, but you shall feel it wounding you in an invisible manner if you do not change your ways. He said this, and they being alarmed at his words, since while he was speaking, he appeared inspired, and his appearance became changed so that he looked like a prophet. And fearing lest he might be uttering divine oracles and predictions, they obeyed and became submissive and brought back the flock of the maidens to the trolls, first of all, removing their own cattle. So again, we see these situations where men have an inner inspiration or an inclination to do that which is right, but it was never with an actual intention or desire to wear a crown. It never was. It was in service, or as it spoke of, an innate love of justice, an invisible eye of justice. Men, it was something compelling to men, right? So now I read a couple articles this week because I just looked up, okay, what would differentiate a person that say had ill intentions and a desire to quote unquote lead, or true intentions, and how do we know that? So this isn't something that's really new. There's different research on it. There's different articles. Corporate companies, they put a lot of money into it. They've done studies, and so it'll be some interesting things to read. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Let me remove this, and okay. All right. So I'm gonna share my screen here. We just want to know, how do we know that a man is true? How do anybody know they're true? It's common today to desire to want to do something, right? Want to assist. You want to be whatever you want to. I don't, you want to serve your people if you can, right? And you also want to have the strength to sit on the sideline and assist the people who can, if that's the right thing to do. So how do we know, and how do we determine our intentions are true, right? So I found a article, and it was titled "Journey to Leadership." So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Let me see here, right? So it says 11 signs of an ego tripping and power hungry leader, right? And this is just in terms of like the corporate world, but these traits can pretty much be universal, right? So it says, wondering if you are ego tripping or if you are a power hungry leader, right? These leaders are said to be ego tripping, power tripping, or power hungry. Below are the 11 signs revealing whether or not you are power hungry or ego tripping, right? So the first thing says, the first sign, power hungry leaders are bullies. They bully their team members to ensure dominance and to kill any potential that would threaten their sense of power. So that will obviously X a person out, because in true leadership, the desire is the greater good, right? So sometimes it might come in the form of not attempting to lead and just supporting those who can, but you also would want to be able to properly determine what you can do as well. You don't want to be shamefaced or bashful if you can advance whatever the mission is, right? It says they overly criticize others, take cheap shots, and undermine the success of the entire team by creating chaos, right? Number two, power hungry leaders are empty individuals. They are not whole individuals. Truth is, they have a heightened sense of self, very low self esteem, and need to constantly feed their ego. Furthermore, they are not self aware, mindful of their actions, have low self esteem, and an unhealthy work life balance, right? The next one was interesting because it says power hungry leaders hide deep insecurities. Ego tripping and power hungry individuals are weak minded and will give anything to fill that inner void. For most, ego tripping and power hungry people are people who have felt powerless while growing up. Deep inside, they're weak, are cowards, fear their own shadow, don't have any real power, and they know it. They're unstable and easy to break, right? So, in a desire to maybe overcompensate for voids or lack of success in other areas, sometimes different vehicles, such as religious vehicles, can sometimes be used to overcompensate it. So, we want to consider all of these things, and while still remembering true leadership is service, and it isn't enough to sometimes gauge what many people might do, because you might look and say, well, if that person is doing it, then I can. And in some cases, that's very true. But the fact of the matter oftentimes is both cases could be inadequate, right? And so it's not so much, in many instances, you would see it might be a brother, you um it's not always something to brag about when if a person is there and you in control, and then you see a lot of people vying for your position, because sometimes that's an example of saying, well, bro, whatever it is you're doing, I can do that, right? But and sometimes I think it's looked at in an opposite way, like, man, you don't know what it takes, or and you hear a lot of these things like, oh yeah, I didn't ask to do it, or I'm a servant. But in all actuality, sometimes when you compare what some of these positions constitute today, it isn't much of a service, but rather it would be more comparable to a monarch or a king in some sorts that has servants rather than serving. And we have to really look at this thing, right? I'm gonna X out of this momentarily. You really have to look at it. Is it's like bringing a lesson or an interpretation of scriptures. It could be a work and it could be a service, but how does it equate to the development or the betterment of the people that you're serving? Like, because if it's just a thing to where weekly, I might be able to summon 300 people somewhere up the street, and I mean it's difficult, if people come and let me stop sharing my screen here. Okay. And sometimes it's actually more so labor or work for the people to come, because they equate it to their faith or their belief and the keeping of, the Sabbath or whatever the organization, or if it's a church, if it's a camp, whatever you would call it. Sometimes it's them working, right? It's them doing the working. And I think there has to be a shift in those who are called leaders to re-examine what that actually means, because we know, I mean, it's a system, all right. If you go through the Bible, you bring a new teaching or whatever the case might be, or even maybe the same teaching, and then that constitutes service. Or if I go around my family and somehow I argue them up and down about how everything they do is wrong, and I quote unquote I'm just trying to deliver them from the fire, right? Because they don't think how I think, so I have to convince them of their ignorances, gainsay them, and now lead them to the kingdom. You don't see that so much in the Bible. And even oftentimes when they were contending for things within scripture, it was dealing, even when you looked at heresy, these were major things where people didn't even acknowledge the Messiah as the Messiah, even a need for him, where there were different interpretations like sacrificial law, Gentiles, major things. It wasn't so much so I have to, travel across the water to convince someone of minuscule doctrinal points. And a lot of those, that ideology is really Christian dogma going back to 4th century, where people were being killed for not accepting the Trinity or the virgin birth. Even when you look in the Hebrew translation of Matthew from the Ebionites, right? There is no chapter 1 or chapter 2 that speaks about a virgin birth, right? That speaks about a different genealogy from Luke. And those things are big controversies. And anyone can go read it. You'll see it starts in the 3rd chapter. But around the 4th century, they were threatened with death. So now it would seem as if the virgin birth, or even the term M.G.G.W, which is like a Zoroastrian term, and that is an ideology that deals with a virgin birth, right? A woman having not laid with a man. That translator, right? Not to I don't know his intent, right? I don't know. I know that he translated Matthew from the Greek Septuagint, and we don't know who it was, right? Jerome, he had a translation of the book of Matthew. Don't know who it was. So what that man, if he translated it from the Greek Septuagint during that time, that is what a virgin would have meant to him, right? And it's not, I don't know, you might believe in the virgin birth, you might not, but I'm just telling you that it wasn't a universal thing. So a lot of times when we are speaking on heresies, or those were grave things, to where a lot of the things that constituted heresy in the Bible, is everybody's pretty much uniformed on that today, right? So a lot of times where we deal with certain disputes and it's classified as the work, right? Convincing somebody of what I think, right? This is the work, right? Or I got to go, show up somewhere to go speak before 50, 60 people. I mean, it's not really that hard to do. You know what I mean? I think many men of the awakening, we enjoy the scriptures. We enjoy talking about them. I don't know how much work that requires. I think sometimes, it's more work to sit and take notes and to learn. So with that mindset, you would want to think how to actually benefit people. Like when we look at Moses, when we read about Samuel, I mean, these people were putting their life on the line. I just spoke about even the Ebionites. They were threatened with death, right? They had to and their book of Matthew was off the table. That's a great word. You know what I mean? Translating the Bible for people to understand. And so, that's really a conversation I wanted to start up. So I'm gonna bring. Actually, I didn't share the link with Doc Elijah, but I'm about to send it to you now, Doc, if you present, so we can come in and really just talk about it. The true leader is servant. There might be a few more things I want to share, but I want to get Ox take, so I'm gonna bring in, just to spark conversation, because ultimately, as a man, I think it's something innate that is in a man to desire to do great things, and get in where you fit in, but you want to be true to it. You want to be true to that desire, and you want to make sure you're doing the right thing for the right reason, right? For the right reason. And that's a quest that I'm on, in a pursuit of virtue. So I'm gonna bring Ak on. Small crowd today, and that's fine. That's sometimes even better. So let me notify Ak that I sent him the link. Let me see here. The true leader is servant, right? All right. True leader is servant. Okay. So if you weren't here for the whole show, we touched on Moses, some of his time where he was alone, when he fled Egypt, and how he was putting his life on the line just in mere protection of people. So now the Most High sought him out and said, yes, in your care for people, in your service for people, I will use you, right? I will use you. But in the West today, it's not very controversial, especially at this time, right? Even I believe the awakening of understanding the scriptures, if you would call it the Israelite movement, it's actually a popular thing, right? It's a popular thing. So with knowing these things, right, we want to know, how can we be servants, right? How can we be servants? The true leader is servant. So I just sent Ak a link. Let me tune in to the comments. I know we got one brother. Okay, Zadok Wakar. He actually okay. Well, he offered some help, I guess. So shalom to Zadok Wakar. But yeah, true leader is servant. True leader is servant. True leadership is servitude. And we want to be sure that our intentions are true and learn more about it. The Messiah was the greatest example when he walked the earth. It says he didn't take on the reputation of men, right? But came to carry out the will of the Most High, right? A selfless love. So much so, not only did he not desire anything of the people to make merchandise of the people, but he actually gave to the people his life, to be exact. So it doesn't get any greater than that. It doesn't get any greater than that. So this was just something that was on my mind throughout the week. Wanted to touch on, and I'll continue to on Fridays. If anybody would like to come on and conversate on the topic, you're welcome to. If not, we've been on for 45 minutes, so I'll probably end the broadcast. But it was a couple things I wanted to talk about that, were on my mind, and considering exactly what that means. Right now, the Israelite movement, religious movements, and many movements beyond that are prominent, are popular. And it becomes a thing where it's new things popping up every day. And you have to wonder, like, what is the path? What is the true path and the true way to go about serving, right? To make sure your focus and your intent is in the right place. And it just drew me to bringing out the fact that true leadership is servitude. That was the words of the Messiah. It was Matthew 23:11, where he said, but he that is greatest amongst you shall be your servant. We read about Samuel, who was greatly grieved when they brought to him the idea of a monarchy, right? A sole leader, because even amongst the disciples, right, which is contrary to popular belief. Again, we brought up even during the time of the Ebionites, where Peter, and the understanding of Peter being a sole leader, this was to gain military influence, actually. So that interpretation was imposed upon the text as Peter being the rock, right? As Peter being the rock, and not the words that he said being the foundation for the church of the Messiah. And when Samuel explained that, he said, well, if it's a person that's outside of government, naturally, they will desire that they will make decisions based on their own desires. It's natural. So it said he was a lover of justice, and he desired aristocracy where there were families. It was more sort of a communal way, aged men, and you would establish councils like that where there were no interpretations outside of the rulings. And he went in and said, well, these things come with men, right? Horsemen and bakers and so on and so forth, that these are the things that you're going to have to give up. You'll be servants. And the people still desired that. So in attempting to walk in the same vein as the Messiah, right, and in a spirit of truth, and being the servant, right, whom the Messiah called great, it even mentions whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. So is that merely just casting down my countenance or making a soft temperament? What is that? Humility, right? Humility. And there's actually a theory, I believe it's the not a theory, I'm sorry, it was actually a experiment. It's the Kerr-Dunning theory. Let me look it up here. And it's funny because the Bible is full of maxims, right? Universal laws, but sometimes it's just taken to be wise sayings. So when we say, okay, yeah, just be humble, and sometimes that's taken to mean like being soft spoken or of a certain temperament. But in humility, it forces one to be aware, right? Aware of shortcomings, having an ability to judge themselves, right? The scriptures, it's a scripture I always references that it tells us every man's way is clean in his own eyes. Like if you ask him, he'd be able to justify, rightfully so. We're with ourselves all the time. But the scriptures say he who humbles himself, right? He who humbles himself shall be exalted. So nevertheless, I can't find the name of that experiment that was done, but the experiment basically is this is okay, Elijah just text me. Okay, let me send you the link. Okay, let me see. To Elijah. Okay. And it's actually that there was an experiment to where people were asked how intelligent they thought they were, right? And it was without fail that the people that thought more of themselves, when they were actually judged empirically, meaning according to data, where they fell on the list, they were lower. But people that had a scope and an ability to view themselves and say, well, objectively, and they thought less of themselves, they actually did better, right? They actually did better. I found it actually. Okay, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? So I'm gonna actually I'll just share it, right? So we'll read it. And so when we speak about he who humbles himself shall be exalted, it's universal law. It's like it's a science, right? It isn't merely words. And sometimes scriptures are taken to be that. But I'm gonna read. Hey, shalom, Mark. How you doing?
Shalom, Art. Doing well. My apologies. Went to spam.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And really quick, I'm just gonna share on my screen and read a quick article, and then I would like to hear you on the topic. True leader is a servant. So I'm gonna share my
Yes,
screen
sir.
really quick. I was speaking about the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? And
Mm.
in regards to the fact that the scriptures say, he who humbles himself shall be exalted, and he who exalts himself shall be humbled. And this was an
Mm.
interesting theory because it says in psychology, the Dunning-Kruger effect in psychology is a cognitive bias whereby people with limited knowledge or competence in a given intellectual or social domain greatly overestimate their own knowledge or competence in that domain relative to objective criteria or to the poor performance of their peers or of people in general. According
mm,
to the researchers for whom it is named, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, the effect is explained by the fact that the metacognitive ability to recognize deficiencies in one's own knowledge or competence requires that one possess at least a minimum level of the same kind of knowledge or competence, which those who exhibit the effect have not attained because they are unaware of their deficiencies. Such people generally assume that they are not deficient, in keeping with the tendency of most people to choose what they think is the most reasonable and optimal option. Although not scientifically explored until the late 20th century, the phenomenon is familiar from ordinary life, and it has long been attested in common sayings. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and in observations by writers and wits through the ages, ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge, right? So I'll read that again. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. And if we remember, it was Paul who said, any man that thinketh he knoweth anything knoweth nothing yet as he ought to know, because that's typically, as we arrive at the door of instruction, the more we learn, you're typically brought to a state to be more aware of the things you don't know, raising humility, raising awareness of one's own deficiencies. But on the other side, it says, um, ignorance more frequently begets confidence. So in that
mm.
exalting oneself, humility follows, right? A humbling of those who exalt themselves. So, you see the lesson. True leader, a servant. So please, let me know what you think.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent lesson. You know, uh, a lot of brothers, especially, when it comes to the Hebrew community, um, due to uh, just the spectacle that is made out on the streets of brothers teaching, having the microphone,
Mm,
having all the attention on them, getting
mhm,
the honor and the praise of, being a great teacher or having a lot of knowledge and stuff like that. Um, that's something that a lot of brothers covet,
mm,
but it's not for the right reasons.
mm,
A true leader, you know, a lot of times when we read about the men who came before us in the scriptures, they didn't ask to be leaders,
mhm,
right? They were elected, they were chosen by the
mhm,
Most High, and the title is perfect. It's so befitting because like Christ said, he who is greatest among you shall be the servant to
mhm,
all,
mm,
and people don't understand or realize how much servitude comes with it.
mm,
It's a lot of work.
mm,
It's constant, you know, uh, your skill sets or your knowledge or your wisdom. People need it,
mm,
you know, and when we look at Moses, I know you had brought him up earlier in the
mhm,
show,
mhm,
and we talk about meekness. Uh, the Most High said in Numbers 12 that Moses was the most meek man in all of the earth.
mm, mhm,
And what they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
mm.
You know, so
Absolutely, yeah.
it can be a dangerous thing for some people if it's not coupled with lowliness, humility, and true selflessness,
Mm,
right? Because being a leader, it's not about you, you know.
right.
Um, it's all about the people.
Mhm,
And having been in a leadership position myself, um, sometimes due to the gifts or the certain things that people may admire about you, you know, they they see that you have something that can be of use of them.
mm,
Even if it's you went to a trade school for carpentry,
mhm,
masonry. If you go into a body of brothers, they're gonna see this and they're gonna be like, hey brother, like, we got this, we need that, can you do this?
Mm,
and you just get put to work immediately,
mm,
right? And it's a lot at times. At times it really is a lot. I mean,
mm,
again, I'll allude to Moses. I'll use him as an example. Um, it was so much on him. He he asked the Most High to like take him out.
mm.
Take his life. He said these people are too much.
Wow.
It's too stressful.
Yeah.
To where his father-in-law Jethro had to implement these certain things to put in place
Mm,
for other men who had a fear of the Most High, men who weren't covetousness, men who were just, and all of these things. He was like, look, put some of your spirit upon these men so that they can help you. Because he said,
mm.
surely if you don't have the help, you're going to drive yourself to an early grave.
Man,
Right.
man. Yeah.
Mm,
Indeed. Indeed. Man, bro. Yeah. Yeah, that's something, man, because it's like you mentioned, and as time progresses, it's just like it's just over and over again. It goes from the street preaching, and it goes, and I do
mhm,
remember there's a time like where I was certainly convinced in my mind that it
mhm,
was like a great thing to let me go. I have to convince my family, and sure, I believe that the biblical laws are true, and and it's the most advantageous way to live, like
mhm,
indeed. But slowly but surely, like I started realizing, okay, so that person might eat pork. This is my dear friend. We've been friends forever, but this particular friend, he's a little bit more honorable than me, right? He's lived
mhm,
a more decent way, and surely, like, I'm convinced, like, man, I need to convert him, and maybe it could be of some benefit.
mhm,
But then it got to a point where I'm like, wait a minute, this thing is like more so me developing meat. And you read a little more, and I'm like, okay, so when Paul is so filled up with zeal and to do the work, it's like, man, they're convincing people
mhm,
that the Messiah is actually Lord. You know what I mean? It's not
mhm,
like, you know, it's 100 of us versus 100 of y'all because you do this, that, and then I do some wise gymnastics to say, and because of that, y'all
mhm,
are going to hell. Like, you don't see many places where particular doctrinal points would allude to people being condemned. Now, if a
mhm,
person that isn't me, like, if a person is obstinate and lies against the truth, I don't I'm not the Most High, but I imagine they'll have difficulties in life in general. You know what I mean?
right.
That's to their own detriment to lie against the truth for their own self will. But I believe this idea, yeah, and there are scriptures that could allude to it. Like, oh, I'm just filled with righteous indignation for my people because I see them, going this way. So I have to convert them. I have to enlighten them. And I believe it's like in Romans 1 and 2, Paul
Mhm,
is having a similar conversation. Like, I mean, well, you're telling people things that are true, right? You are like, okay, you tell people not to do this, but in all honesty, there are so many more things, effective things that you could do to develop you and the people within your immediate reach, to where you may not need to be so consumed with converting other people, because there
mhm,
are things that are off amongst you all. And so that
mhm,
brings me to like the conversation. You hear it so much, and I could say, and if I'm being honest, I could say that there are many men who let's say, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, were pioneers. I mean,
mhm,
this was not a cool thing. You know what I mean? So
right.
it's like, people did not know these things. You would have been deemed crazy, but today it isn't so much ostracized, maybe here or there, right? And then that's not even to mention, um many of many men, over organizations, they might have people in other places, and you might be familiar with some of these guys, and these guys are more royalty than them, when they aren't
Mhm,
there, at least. You know what I mean? They, you ask that man, brother, man, I'm doing the work, and I'm like, I mean, bringing a lesson. This isn't that hard. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? This isn't the hardest thing I've had to do. Um, so you just really wonder. in today's time. You know, what is the service? I can't say it's something as blanket as, you know, you can go into the community, but then there's also it has to, like, I can't say, okay, you might, because you might just be going perpetuating the cycle, right? We grow up, all kids
Mm-hmm.
want to play sports, you know, and it's like, but there are things to where, you know, introduction to STEM. You mentioned a trade, like you know, masonry, carpentry, and bringing in angles from that way. It might not be televised, but that's a true service, right? A kid has an opportunity out of high school, college, make 60,000, 80,000, and progress as a skill does. Isn't much glory in that, right? It isn't much glory in that, but um even better, because it would let a man know in his mind and in his heart it's true, right? Rather than the desire of, like, you know, I could go be before 1,000 people, let them know of my wisdom and interpret all of these scriptures and recite them, and, like you mentioned, be a powerful teacher. I don't know how hard of work that is. I mean, there was a time where people were doing it and their life was on the line, you
Right.
know. So
Mm-hmm.
to really just to be in the mind of a servant, which I desire, right? To want to serve and to have true intentions, like you mentioned, meekness and being abased inside, and in a proper mind toward the Most High, so He can, um, you know, use me for whatever that is, and even if it isn't anything of note, you know, even better. But just want to be committed to it. So that's something I really want to, you know, talk about and understand better. And I appreciate, you know, your insight, because it's right. The scriptures say Moses was the meekest of men. Nothing that he really desired or willed at all.
Right. And Ak, when you talk about what are you really bringing to the table, at this point, especially in the Hebrew community, for the most part, we all know the basic scriptures. We
Mm-hmm.
all know uh, what could I say? The dietary laws.
Mm-hmm.
We know a good amount of the civil laws. The moral laws. We know about the gospel. We
Mm-hmm.
know these things. So it's like, okay, we don't want to be ever learning, but never coming to the knowledge of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's what do we do with the knowledge that we've accumulated from the scriptures, right? Um, when you go into the book of Acts, which the elder he began to go into last Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a continuation of that tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and he was reading about the apostles, right? And once the power of the Spirit came upon them, immediately they went out and they began to do the works,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, of course, they were preaching the gospel. They were preaching about Christ and what he came to do and how it was going to be of their benefit should they
Mm-hmm.
receive him. But they were going from house to house.
Mm-hmm.
They were selling their possessions and
Mm-hmm.
bringing it to the apostles' feet. And the
Mm-hmm.
apostles made distribution to every man according as such had need. So
Mm-hmm.
those who had a little bit more, they got a little bit less. Those who had less, they got a little bit more. So
Mm-hmm.
it was more equity.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, you know, uh, the man who has a skill to bring to the table, teaching other brothers how to build houses, teaching the community how to plant vineyards, how to grow gardens, how to tend to trees, all types of agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
how to extract the materials needed to make certain textiles.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the point where the community needs to be at.
Mm-hmm.
Is the of course uh the word is it's a living word. It's the word
Mm-hmm.
of life.
Right.
It inspires. It's meant to propel us forward, right? And putting our hand to the plow and building up, the Most High's kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
But um, it's time for action. We
Mm-hmm.
have to
Mm-hmm.
do things to where a man can be self-sufficient and not have to depend on another man for anything. And when I
Right.
say another man, primarily, the system, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I feel like that is one of the most um, uh, selfless things that another man can do, and honorable things that another man can do is teaching a man to be self-sufficient, to where
Mm.
he can take care of himself and take care of his family.
Right.
That's what a leader should do. That's what Christ was doing.
Yeah.
Christ was showing them, look, you don't need to go to these Pharisees and Sadducees, these hypocrites.
Mm.
They just love the money,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Filthy lucre. They
Mm-hmm.
just want the power. They prefer the glory of men rather
Mm.
than the glory of God,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? He was showing them to be self-sufficient. Look, you don't have to go to this temple. You are the temple,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? You don't have to give them your hard-earned wages in the form of a sacrifice. You are the sacrifice. You are the
Mm.
living sacrifice,
Mm.
right? So giving them power, giving someone power, and that's what Christ did. He gave
Yeah.
us all power through the
Mm.
Spirit,
Mm.
right? And that's what we're to do as true leaders:
Mm-hmm.
give each other power, empower each other,
Mm.
right?
Right. Right. Man. Yeah, bro. Indeed, man. And that's something, bro. That's something, man. Many good points. And even in Acts, like you pointed out, man, they were giving to the people. Man, it's
Mm-hmm,
like, yeah, bro. It's
mm-hmm,
crazy because it's like through time, as time progresses, interpretations, it can sort of be like right there, but it can be right there, in the book, but
mm-hmm,
it can be so different, because it's explained. And you definitely want to be, as many of us have been raised up wherever we were, right? Wherever we were it, you really want to be in order. And I'm sure many of us have learned, many great things from many great men. But like you mentioned, being self-sufficient. And even when we read about Samuel, where he desired to, like, men to be free, it wasn't me necessarily needing to perpetually guide you. Even the scriptures
mm-hmm,
speak of a time where a man doesn't always have to ask his neighbor who is the Lord,
mm-hmm,
right? But instead, like you mentioned, the scriptures, it's not much more that can continually keep coming out, but it's like a work to do, to be able to assist people's lives and even get assisted, be
mm-hmm,
off grid, be independent, autonomous as a people,
mm-hmm,
and benefit. But right now, it becomes a thing where it's like, okay, another organization, they'll pop up, maybe one slight doctrinal difference or whatever the case might be, and then we're taught, like, many people are, I know you understand, and I believe it's a place for it, because in regards to like hearsay and things of that sort,
right.
and it could be right, because oftentimes I remember you might see where there was a person who might have been underdeveloped. So you're
Mm-hmm,
basically saying, brother, it doesn't matter, whatever it is right now, you should focus on this, right?
right.
Because the mysteries aren't going to be revealed until you master what's in your immediate domain, right? But deal
Mm-hmm,
with the fundamentals of your situation first, and then, right, we can talk about it, and then we can talk about it. But it's like, it became a thing where literally everything, like, don't go against. And sometimes it would be, credible people, you know what I mean? But it's
mm-hmm,
like, hey, I don't see it this way, and that could have been looked at as a heresy. But you look, it was like three things that constituted heresy, things you and I probably wouldn't agree with. Like, I'm not sure your stance on maybe like the virgin birth, or um the Trinity. I'm pretty, not the Trinity, right? But I know there are
mm-hmm,
some Israelites who ascribe to the virgin birth. But it was like major things that were constituted as heresy. But it wasn't it wasn't little things, because you see there were disagreements amongst apostles. You know
right.
what I'm saying? So it's like, it you know and I don't pretend to know people's intentions, but it's like the work, like, that's the topic, a service, being a benefit to people, a true benefit, and a desire, a love of humanity, of mankind, and saying, look, it's the most high's creation, let me serve you. And that's even something that we have to bring ourselves to, because living in America, living in the West,
Mm.
a capitalist society, an individual society, we don't grow up in collective communities where we depend on one another. Like it might be, in different African villages or whatever the case might be, like our dependence, the cultivation of crops,
Mm.
water, different things. It's a communal,
Right.
and you don't see the same type of covetousness or a competition and everything. But here it's
Mm.
like we're programmed to be a certain way. Today I was watching, I don't know if you watch like football, but I'm from Florida, and where I grew up, the Gators, they were big, and there was a
Right.
documentary placed on Netflix. And
Mm.
are you familiar with Tim Tebow?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Man, and it was something, bro. He was like the second string quarterback, right? His freshman year. And I'm like, man, bro, I'm talking about the whole season. He was locked in. He was supporting. You never seen like, and I played basketball in college, so I used, yeah, that's how I ended up now in the Midwest. And I just ended up staying here, but it was like that was something, as an athlete, I'm like, man, that's tough. And you the quarterback, and the signs there, and the brother, I mean, he's locked in, bro. I mean, anytime he
Mm.
could be called in for one play in the fourth quarter, he out there, he live. And you could even see at least how the camera depicted it, like the first string quarterback was a little bit uneasy. And Chris Tebow
Mm.
grew up in a extremely religious home. He was actually
Right.
homeschooled, right? But
Mm.
and he was homeschooled, but even homeschool kids, you could play sports at the high school.
Right,
And
right.
so and I was really, of all the things I seen, because they were highlighting like the dynasty that the Gators had, and I was like, man, bro, that's tough. I mean, dude was the hugest high school recruit. Most high school recruits, you come in as a freshman, if they don't fulfill your promise, like, man, you told me I was gonna start, they out of
Mm.
there, they transfer. Tebow is locked in, bro. And I was just
Mm.
thinking, like, man, when you think about
Mm.
nation building, when you think about Uriah, right,
Mm.
slept on the porch, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Because he's like, nah, that's just something that's in me. Like I can't. That's no advantage for me, right?
Mm.
That is no advantage for me. If them brothers is out on the battlefield, you know, even and that's at the and a king is telling them to do it, but it's like, nah, I'm not. I'm governed by kings, but not to the point to where I would compromise justice,
Right.
fairness, equity. And when people are moving like that, even from the lowest to the top, you like, yeah, I mean, that's something that can really happen, to where our people can be, in a good position. And I want to make one more point. Have you
Mm-hmm.
seen those interview bites that Judge Joe Brown has been doing?
Yeah, yeah, yep, of course. Which one in particular are you
Bro, the one
referring
when he
to?
was breaking down the trains and everything, to where if he became mayor, how he was going to boost the economy in, I believe,
Mm.
Memphis. Man, I was like, yo, I said, man, bro, we've been doing a disservice. We put our kids in sports, everything.
Right.
I'm like, man, but the understanding the brother had, I mean, literally, bro, I was
Mm.
like, wow, and we spoke about last week STEM, and I mean that you would have thought the brother was spouting off like a genius, understood the canals, everything that needed to be done, how to bring factories here, how to do this, and I was like, yeah, that's a service. He knew the
Mm.
numbers of the jobs that would be boosted, of everything that would happen. I'm like, yeah, that's real skill. Not just sitting up like, man, let me give you advice on this, let me give you
Right,
advice
right.
on that. One brother told me a situation, and I'm not gonna. It was a small organization. I'm not that familiar with the organization. It's not about them. Brother told me he was making $85,000 a year. He pulled up. He had got a new car. The vehicle was $20,000, and the leader walked out to him and was like, "Hey, brother, um, you gonna want to trade that in for something less, for something a little less expensive." And I asked the brother, I said, I mean, did y'all have that type of relationship? But the leader obviously has thought that was like within his job description. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just, the super wise guy. And then the brother was
Right.
confused, right? The brother's like, I mean, what do you mean?
Mm.
Like, I have a job. The brother's a little bit under an engineer. You know what I mean? So he's like, I mean, I'm
Mm.
okay. And he said, man, brother, trade something in for less. So it's like, not only brothers that probably outside of your domain, but it's like it's wrong because you can't trade in a car now unless you got interest, you got negative equity. Like there is nothing less expensive. You'll be paying for two cars. So not only
Mm,
is it incorrect, then the brother doubled down, bro, and he told him, brother, listen to the spirit. And I'm like,
mm,
man, you know what I mean? That's what's become warped as far as
right,
like leadership having an answer for everything,
right, right.
just some like strange counsels and just like knowing everything, and it's called the spirit. And it's like, bro, like you would have you if the brother did that, first he would have went to the dealership, and if he was really moved on what you said, the brother would have probably put like 5,000 down, got a beater car, would have been paying more. You
Mm,
know what I mean? And I'm like, bro, you would have led the brother to destruction, not even understanding what leadership is and what's required of you, which is truly a servant, but you viewing yourself as a guru that transcends every area of life, leading a brother into destruction.
you know,
You know,
that actually sounds like some envy to me.
man,
That's what it sounds like to me. I
man.
mean, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
because it sounds all too familiar.
Mm,
I've definitely seen a lot of the things that you're talking about,
mm,
or that you alluded to.
man.
Just people who um, have these positions,
Mm,
and claim that the Most High put them there,
mm,
right? Bishop of
man.
this, apostle that, prophet
Mm,
this, all these grand titles and stuff
man.
like that. And it's to get people to view them as being superior to themselves,
Mm,
is really to want to lord over the people.
mm,
I feel like a true leader, one of the attributes is he doesn't necessarily want to tell people what to do. You
right.
know what I mean?
Right.
He'll set certain things in order out of necessity,
Mm,
but you know what I'm saying, he may not feel comfortable even uh you know kind of managing people's lives and stuff like that,
right.
because
Right.
true leader knows, it's just like when you have a child, especially a son,
Mm,
right? And
mm,
your father, you're in his life, you're going to allow him to experience a certain level of independence
mm,
from a young age.
mm,
A lot of times mothers, they don't want to let the little boy out of his sight, out of their
mm,
sight.
right.
He falls down and scrape his knee. Oh, you okay?
Mm, yeah.
As a father, you make sure he's good. All right, boy, get up.
Mm,
You know what I'm
right.
saying? Get up.
Right. Right.
You're instilling that strength in him. You
Man.
want him to kind of venture off. You know what I mean? You take him to the playground or something like that. No, don't just stay by me the whole time.
Mm,
Go
right.
out and explore a little bit.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know, that way, that's how you learn and you grow your perception of the world from your own unique perspective.
Mm,
You know, and a lot of times, we see certain leaders who want to lord over the people. They want to know every intimate detail
mm,
about everyone, their lives, right? They want
mm,
people to come to them for counsel, for advice,
mm,
right? For every little thing,
right.
because really, as insecurity in themselves that
Mm,
they have, and they
right.
need that ego to be fed by feeling like the people need them and depend on them. Remember
Mm,
that story? I don't remember the name of the counselor, right? But he was so tight, he was
mm,
so upset
yeah.
that they didn't go to him for the counsel, or they didn't take his counsel, right? That he
Killed
went and
himself.
he offed himself,
Yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
deleted himself, and it's like, what? You
Yeah.
know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's a similar spirit that
Yeah.
we see all over in all different walks of life.
Wow.
Positions, whether it be religion, politics, what have you.
Mm,
But true leaders know that you want the people to become, like I stated before, self-sufficient, to
mm,
where they're going to the Most High for these things.
right. Right.
They're learning patience, they're
Mm,
learning long suffering, they're learning how to endure, right?
mm,
And utilize the wisdom that has been bestowed upon them from the Most High, instead of depending on another man's
mm,
wisdom or his perspective or his
right.
counsel. you know
Yeah.
And the whole goal is to raise up more leaders. And you can't
Mm.
raise up more leaders if they're constantly depending on another person,
Man,
right?
man, man. Con. Absolutely. Man, I see. It's like Samuel
Mm,
said he lost sleep, bro. It's like he lost sleep. Like, wait a minute. What?
mm,
Is that what you want? Do you know this is what will
mm,
be required? He's like,
mm,
man, government justice is a beautiful thing. And as a leader, he was more than willing to subject himself to it. So much so at the end of his reign, it's like if you have you might have an assistant manager who's in charge, or a manager who's in charge, and then the owner comes,
mm,
right? And then
mm,
a good manager would be able to say, yeah, whatever you got to tell him, right? I
mm,
haven't done anything unjust to you, right? And Samuel, in the
mm,
same way, he was able to say it. He's like, I haven't taken anything from you. I haven't dealt with you unjustly. I look to empowerment. But his sons, they went off, and similar to like Eli's sons as
yeah.
well. But I remember, in the situation you spoke about, I believe it was like Absalom, and there were
Mm,
two counselors, and one of them was like a spy for David, and his
mm,
counsel prevailed, and that is yeah, bro, I'm telling you, when that's more realized, like for me, it's just it makes you want to just fall back more, because as you
mm,
see more, and I'm like, man, what a lot of times what it seems like to me, right? For me, I'm not old, I'm still growing, but what it seems like to me, it's like a lot of these things become what you would say in too deep, right? Like
mm,
where things get really big, and it's like unless from the beginning it's acknowledged, like even when you consider American government, it's like you find
mm,
out an official did something corrupt, like, and if the official, now they American government might give you the benefit of the doubt, say, hey man, you're on Congress, so we'll let you try and cover it up. But if you
mm,
don't, if you can't handle it, and it's known that I know, bro, I'm on your head. Like
mm,
I'm not going down with you. And
right.
I believe if you don't, and that obviously you'll want to be even better than that and say, hey, like even if nobody knows, if I find out, you would be subject to the same judgment. Like you would
Mm,
have to be. But when you don't do that, and it's more of like the in group out group type of thing, like we're all right, all of us, we're right, everybody off. You'll hear a lot of people say, oh yeah, they got a little something, but they off a little bit. Like, I
mm,
make myself the determiner of like who's right and what degree, which is like crazy, because I have my own
mm,
biases, my own predispositions, the things
right.
maybe I've been taught, my own perspectives of how I see things. And sure, you try and be as true as you can when you read the scriptures, and you improve in that, right? But that's the
Mm,
humility, so that anything I don't know, I'm aware that there's many things I don't know, so that I'm open when the facts come, right?
mm,
Or when a better understanding comes, and I can move in it. But if I stand on the fact, right, and I'm unwilling to ever even appear to not know, which I don't think
mm,
other people even view it as that. Even when people behave that way, it's not like other people think it,
right.
but when I'm that way, it's like by default, eventually humility is gonna come, because the chicken comes home to roost. And so now, and
Mm,
just having conversations like this, it gives us an insight into government. Not that the desire is to like recreate what we've seen, and or in camps or churches, but it's like, if even just families coming together, bro, if your family grows along my family and Ahmad, you do that, you have acres, you know what I mean? But
mm,
then our children will grow, and then even just within families, like I believe between Ahmad and I, we have a lot of children, bro. So it's like 20,
mm,
you know what I mean? We have 20 people between our both of our houses.
mm,
So it's like alone, they'll be adults. Some are girls, some are boys. When they were young, you speak about those things if children reach their full potential. But hey,
mm,
you just, if it's the Most High's will, and then that becomes something. But for me, my sincerest desire is just to be able to raise my sons. I have daughters too, and that's important. But
mm,
women can deal with that, and I do a lot of training with them all and different things, a lot of studying, a lot of learning, and
mm,
that's really my desire. But if it is something beyond that, you want to accept it, but I'm okay with it not, because as we have these conversations, it makes it more. It's so much, bro. It's so much required, and it's
mm,
a long fall. It's a
mm,
long fall, bro. You know,
mm,
I mean, I know we we've seen it. We continue to, and it's like in too deep. If you build something on the idea of being infallible, or being perfect, or knowing it all, it's like it isn't the way, bro.
right. And that's why I love, from what I've seen, the humility of the elder,
Mm,
Elder Gabar, that is.
mm,
And he's like, hey, we need to have a council of 12.
mm-hmm,
We have, 6 chairs on one side, 6 chairs on the other side, and we have one in the middle, one empty
mm,
seat in the middle for Christ.
mm,
And that's beautiful because
mm-hmm,
I've never heard that before from an elder. you
mm,
know I've never heard that. And it's
mm,
like, because a lot of men, they want to sit in the seat of Christ,
man.
right? But for him to say that, um like I said, it just shows a great deal of humility, and the idea of doing things differently, because
Mm,
like you said, we've seen these things happen in the community to where it's in too deep. It's like you're building one thing on top of another, and as you're up here, you realize that, hey, you made a mistake down here on the lower levels.
mm,
But instead of having the humility or the patience, right, to just undo the levels that you built on top already, and then deal with that mistake that was made on the lower level,
mm,
and then restructure it back up to where everything is level. You know, a lot of times brothers don't want to do that,
mm,
and I think the elder has seen a lot of the mistakes that have been made in the community. Not just the Hebrew community, but religion, politics, whatever it may be.
mm,
And you know, he is seeing, like, there's a better way to do this. Let's
mm,
not make one leader, let's not make one head. No, we're going to have a council of men. We're going to vote on things. We're going to have a committee, right?
mm,
So that way there's checks and balances.
mm,
That way, no one man is an island. We're
mm,
all doing things and governing together as it
mm.
should be.
Right.
Christ had his 12 for a reason.
Mm,
He was asking them things, not that he didn't know or whatever, but he was getting their input
mm,
on certain things,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just wanted to speak on that's a beautiful thing, and I think
Yeah.
that's something that you know something that should be practiced more among
Right.
us.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because the brother in the comments, he said I need help, and I guess he
Mm,
was laughing a little bit, but to the point, I do need help, bro, and that's what the brother's acknowledging, right? I can't do it alone, so I
mm,
appreciate you reminding me of that, bro, and that's why we doing it. That's why we have ox, because there are things I'm not gonna be able to see, and it's some and I get it, because it's like Christian dogma
mm,
and has great influences even still on the Israelite community as we learn more, because even with Peter and those interpretations, it was like that was a Pope's breakdown of
mm,
Peter, because it was like he was like, I need a military to back me. So he was right in sending it out the letter, see, on this rock. So therefore, I'm a
mm,
little bit higher of a bishop
mm,
than you all. So, and then him being able to impose that, it was like that got military power. So these things were like, this was a really this was ideological warfare, and even that
mm,
idea during those times where people were dying for not accepting certain beliefs. Now you get that certain level of like Christianity, where you would see many times, because even the Messiah, right? The Messiah showed great maturity, and the greatest example to where even there were people, and he said, just leave them alone. Like they aren't doing anything that's detrimental to the work. Even
Mm-hmm.
when you see his discourse with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they were often pursuing him. And it even says sometimes he ignored them, because he's just like, this isn't a conversation in truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's nothing really, it isn't for the benefit, or it isn't for the edification. So the Messiah wasn't, he would say, nah, don't go that way, right? Don't go into the way of them. So what it was like, so these ideas where it's like it's a battery in the back, like you'll see, man, people, man, I just want to help my people, or I just go, you got people arguing with their grandma up and down, and I did that, but I've apologized, since then. Like I was younger, and my grandma, she always was you know, a decent lady, raised me, for a time and different things when I was younger. And that was the thing, because I was programmed like, man, I'm trying to convert everybody, argue everybody up and down, not knowing a lot of things sometimes, like that I didn't maybe know for myself, right? But I had my go-tos, the things I remember, or whatever the case might be. And then it became a thing where it was like, even with the inspiration for the pursuits of virtue, like as I progressed, and I'm like, wait a minute, the scriptures say, into your faith at virtue, into virtue, knowledge. And you see much of what the Messiah dealt with was that, and when he spoke to, and even one scripture that's often used is there is no other name,
Mm-hmm.
and then that sometimes can be used to impose that, like a name, but even a name dealing with like bearing forth the attributes of the said entity, rather than
Mm-hmm.
like the exact moniker that I refer to him as, but it's like in the likeness of, because even the
Right.
scriptures say, many shall say, haven't we cast out devils in thy
Mm-hmm.
name, right? In
Mm-hmm.
thy name. So it isn't even so speaking to a literal thing. And that's that. I'm not saying that we should ever be obstinate to anything that is true, right? Because humility and is the fruits of the spirit. So you would want to, even if I'm certain, or I think I'm certain of something, and my eye shows me something and it's irrefutable, then I would have to, I would want to acknowledge that, thank him for that, rather than not agreeing. So I'm not saying that, but these things, we can't allow them to make us think our cause is more important than it is, because ultimately what the Messiah came dealing with was a man's character, right? A man's
Mm-hmm.
virtue. And then Paul, a lot of the work they were doing, these were people that didn't acknowledge the Messiah at all, people that
Mm-hmm.
were not even, and then other times Gentiles that were not even born in a Judeo-Christian society, where some of these people, their spirituality was intertwined with fornication, what I mean, like crazy
Mm-hmm.
things, to where even Paul a couple times, you have, I believe, in Acts 15, what Paul says, okay, don't sacrifice to idols, don't eat things offered to blood. And then
Mm-hmm.
Paul even goes on at one point to say, let every man be convinced in his own mind. So Christians
Mm-hmm.
have taken that to the left side, but rather, right, instead of imposing difficult sanctions on people before the time that
Mm-hmm.
they're ready, like strict Sabbath regimens. That doesn't mean Paul didn't keep the Sabbath. It doesn't mean
Right.
he wasn't disciplined enough to. But he's saying, if you do this too fast, in the same way you wean a person off of drugs too fast, they'll relapse, and a person will reject it altogether because it's too difficult. But through
Mm-hmm.
understanding something like, okay, I kept the Sabbath, my body feels a little bit better, my mind is a little bit more clear, I can reset. I was dealing with some irritability, so this is it was made for man, right, and not me for it. Or when I
Mm-hmm.
changed according to the dietary laws, when I stopped committing fornication and just dealt with my situation, I wasn't in an inordinate lust, right, but I was convinced and I understood it within my own mind. So it wasn't crazy liberality, but these are the things that was being taught for people's benefit, not so much, you know, you just classify anything as the work, and you like, man, bro, like it isn't so much what I have a desire to do now, but when you're younger, you just looking at like, well, man, that's not that
Mm,
hard. Like you go sit up, it's 50 people, you get your breakdown of the scriptures, it's double honor to you. If I didn't know any better, you know what I mean? If I didn't know any better, in the world, these things that was prestigious. It wasn't really difficult, you know?
mm.
So
Yo, absolutely, bro. Man, you said a whole lot. As you were speaking towards the end, something came into my mind, and
mm,
you know, believe that you have two types of leaders, right?
mm,
You have leaders who are born, right? Just like the Most High told Jeremiah.
mm,
He said, I sanctified you. He said, I knew you in the belly before you were born, and I
mm,
ordained you a prophet unto the
mm,
nations,
mhm,
right? And then you have those who are taught, right?
mm,
Converted into being leaders.
mm,
And right. And of course, we're all, followers of the Most High and
mhm,
Christ.
mhm,
But again, Christ came to establish leaders upon the earth, saviors, if you
mm,
will.
mhm,
Right. And but before we get to that point, like you said, before we lay on all these heavy burdens and these things that are much too difficult for people who are coming out of a particular lifestyle
mhm,
or system or way of doing things, right? Real quick, here's Galatians chapter 4 and verse 1.
okay.
Says, now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant,
Mm,
though he be Lord of all,
mm,
but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed of the Father. So
mm,
that's what it is. We're to be under tutors and governors, right? And
mhm,
I think when a brother or sister is enlightened to the truth,
mhm,
right? That really is much different from what they were taught learning up, rather in their household, rather in church, rather in the school system, certain ideologies and philosophies. Naturally they want to learn more and more, and then the first person who comes and brings them this knowledge that really lights a fire or kindles a fire in them, they
mhm,
want to keep on learning to that leaning to that person and learning from that person. But
very
there
much
comes a time where they must be weaned, right?
so.
Because we all have to become as newborn babes. We have to be born after the water and after the spirit.
Mhm,
But, just how Paul said in one of his letters, we have need to be given milk, but the time will come where, we're able to consume that strong meat.
mhm,
But
mhm,
it's very important that uh, we have the what's the word I'm looking for, the discernment. It's very important that we have the discernment to know when that time is.
mm,
Okay, it's time to wean myself off of the milk, and that would be, sister, you got on these pants, and brother, take
mm,
your hat
okay.
off, and
Mm,
all of those things. I mean, yeah, there's certain things, sisters, you definitely should dress, modestly.
mhm,
Brothers,
mhm,
don't have your pants hanging
mhm,
below your waistline, don't have your behind showing, you
mhm.
know, but we really have to touch the hearts of the person first.
Man,
That's the way they have to be cleansed from the inside out.
man,
First, you clean the inside of the cup, and then you deal with the outside of the cup,
mm,
right?
mm,
And that way, I believe, is more of a tactful way, like you said earlier, to really train them up, if you will, under the tutors and governors to where they're able to be an heir of all.
mm,
Hmm.
man, man. Indeed, bro. Indeed. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, bro. Because for so long, like you mentioned, going out, confounding, someone is seen as the work. And many great things have been done, with street ministries and with different churches, different organizations. It isn't to take away, from any of that, but
mm,
it's like, at what point, because, and I mean, we've seen that things progress, knowledge is there, and you commend the work, especially many of the aged men have done. I could only imagine, 15, 20 years ago, many of these guys that were founders and different things, that was uncharted territory. They were
mm,
pioneers, right? So it's like,
mm,
it's definitely an honor due. Um, it's definitely an honor due,
mm,
but you see now it becomes, it's just splinter, splinter this, splinter that. And many,
mm,
younger groups have come up, and you see, for every niche or for every desire within the Israelite community, what type of, energy you ascribe to. You got guys that are more urban, with
right,
it.
right,
And myself, I ascribe, I'm more of a cultural person, like a far east, that's how I raised my home.
mm,
I a traditional, in a traditional fashion.
mm,
um and so you might see different things more to that way. You might see a more modern, because some people, they don't deal with like any of the language or anything at
mm,
all, so they've created their own type of culture, and it just keeps going and going and going, to where you sometimes wonder, okay, what is the desire? Is it what is the desire? But the ultimate thing has to be, like you mentioned, to reach a person's heart. And that's something that we grow in. Like, man, I
mm,
desire to care more, and be sure, and be true, because you want to care for your fellow brother. But I mean, we operating, even the scripture speaks about in buying and selling, like sin is always there. And then it's like you
mm,
operating in a very competitive, uh in a competitive world. And then you want to come back and then still operate, according to, the fruits of the spirit. How Abraham,
mm,
when he's seen the angels, and it's like, he's compelled and begging them, can he serve them? That says so
mm,
much about, his character, like begging them to serve them, like, please come sit down, eat. And
mm,
it's like, it's something to get there, to be able to care for the people. The liberal agenda is so hard on our people, man. I've done things like, I've trained, um I trained, and this is something, even when we speak of like service, there was a time, and sometimes when I have time, my schedule changes because I do a lot of contract work. But I
mm,
go train different children at the boxing gym. And I had an older nephew that I had been teaching the box since he was young, and so he had really progressed in the sport. And then it started getting bigger and bigger, and it was something to where, it ended up now to where I have access. There's a pro fighter, Craig Cummings. He competed for like a WBO middleweight belt, and we developed a relationship, how I dealt with the kids. And he got like a state of the art gym, and he basically gave me, I have access to the gym. I haven't gone in a while, but free, it's weights, it's everything. You might have seen where I did my workout in the gym, one of them. I
mm,
did one at Planet Fitness. And so I would go there and I would train kids, and it kept getting, you know, bigger. And it was like a thing to where, kids in the community, were coming. And then there was all, I knew different children within the Israelite community as well. And it was like, the a lot of single mothers, a lot of people, to where it was, it was seen like, at least from, Coach Craig, it was something that people didn't really digest, as far as me not desiring things in return. A lot of coaches,
mm,
you like, quote unquote, the good guy, because in
mm,
the inner city, most of them would have got impregnated by, you know, uh, maybe a street dude, and allegedly you the good guy if you got a little bit of education, or
mhm,
whatever the case might be. And then you go through that cycle of them, you know, running through. and it was just something to really see or have a small experience of how sometimes it can be perceived when you really have that desire. And in my mind, I'm just like, man, this could keep, this could give some children a chance that wouldn't have it otherwise. So you just start, I see myself, you know what I mean? And it
Mm,
was just, it was a care and different things like that. So I want to really adopt that even amongst our people. However, this transpires to work, wherever it goes, whatever it is we can do, but just
mm.
in a true spirit of servitude, you know.
Yes, yes. Man, you said something that was so key. I mean, everything was great. It was something specifically that really just stood out to me,
Mm,
about how you did service to the people without expecting anything in return.
mm,
And that's so huge. Too many times, I mean, we already know, especially in the so-called Black community,
mm,
it's like a lot of times we don't even want to accept help
mm,
because we know we know the a lot of times what comes with that.
man,
Oh, I did this, that, I did this, that, and the third for you, and how I did, and it's like, man,
man.
you know. So a lot of times it's to the point now, it's something that we kind of laugh about, but
Mm,
it's actually kind of sad,
mm,
that for that reason, a lot of times the help that we accept is held over our heads,
mm,
you know. But
mm,
the Most High said, um, the Most High is not unrighteous to forget your works and labor of love,
mm,
right? So we gotta always keep in mind, like, look, don't ever think that your good works and the things that you're doing is going unnoticed,
mm,
right? And not unnoticed by man, because who cares? You know what
mm.
I'm saying?
Right.
Man is,
Who cares?
you're not supposed to let your right hand know what your left hand doeth anyways,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right? You're supposed to give your alms in secret.
mm-hmm,
But the Most High is watching, and we're laboring for a heavenly crown.
mm,
That's what we're laboring for. We're laboring for these heavenly garments.
mm,
So we always have to keep in mind that, you know, um, hey, if you have $100 and that's all you have to your name, and a brother asks you for 20, it's like, brother, all I have is 100.
mm,
But and you have that faith that, what, I have this, whoso seeth his brother suffering,
mm,
and has have this world's goods in hand, but does not help him, but
mm,
just tells him, go, and pray, or I'll pray for you.
mm,
It said the love of the Most High does not dwell in that individual.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? You have to have the faith, knowing that hey, even if you do have only $100 and the brother's asking for 20, give him that 20 in good faith, knowing that the Most High is going to take care of you because
mm.
you're taking care of another,
Right,
right?
right.
So it's we don't labor to hoard up things upon earth,
Mm,
that moths and rust doth corrupt.
mm,
But we're laboring for the heavenly things. We're
man.
laboring for the kingdom.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Mhm,
sir. Man, indeed. Indeed. That's what we laboring for. That's what we laboring for, man.
mhm,
It's really a pursuit of virtue, a pursuit of servitude, and that's the vein we'll continue in.
mhm,
Okay, let me see. We have a couple of comments here. Akiot MHD. We mentioned many leaders don't know how to be leaders. We can't be too pharisaical with people. Indeed,
mhm,
indeed. Yeah, that's right. We definitely want to lead with the care of the people, and the need is there because we are subject. In another land. We aren't free to practice a lifestyle that best suits our people. I mean,
mhm,
you see today, like this liberal agenda is really something to where, I mean, you have to fear it. If your children, they get inundated, with these ideas, different attacks. Um, it's like it's tough. You know it's tough, and you see now, like if you read, and sometimes I know it can be difficult with translation, how the things are translated, because it's more so conveying an idea. And I'm not sure if you ascribe to the book of Jasher, but it spoke
Mm-hmm.
about um how it was in the times of Sodom and Gomorrah, and how the laws had become so unjust and depraved that it was
Mm-hmm.
the guilty that were deemed innocent and deemed correct. And that isn't that far fetched. If you look now at the children who are in kindergarten, who are in first grade, who might have liberal parents, they'll be the judges, right? They'll pass
Mm-hmm.
the laws. They'll be the Congress. You see, the media is liberal. The Supreme Court; those are lifetime positions, and I believe right now it's maintained by predominantly conservatives. Which I'm not a conservative, but those things are, a lot of their principles are more aligned with ours, just as far as
Mm-hmm.
the way of life. And these
Mm-hmm.
things being passed, I don't know. I know it isn't all the way gone yet, right? Because there's still some similitude of justice, but it's coming. It's coming. And so now we have time to prepare, but you want to make sure whatever is set up is something that's true, just, and able to um, sustain the people. So you look at it, and even speaking about Samuel, when he mentioned that aristocracy, and you spoke about 12 men, and really in communities, wherever those communities are, a checks and balance, you know age men, you know
Mm-hmm.
beyond the stage of having age elders. Not saying all the 12 would necessarily have to be, however that's decided, but you want checks and balances. You want older people with influence in your community, because generally speaking, they're past the times of youthful ambition, and they learn how to care for future generations. And you want to
Mm-hmm.
work together to be able to preserve a culture and create one, so when those times come, we don't have to worry about our families, our children fall into um some of the things that there. But the liberal agenda is coming, so this is why those
Mm-hmm.
conversations are there, because it's like remember during the time of Josephus, he was like, if our people were to leave, I don't agree with them, because we'll be worse off. Right now they fight and they killing people because they're setting themselves up, knowing that there's about to be a void of leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that somebody's going to have to have control. And Josephus is like, nah, this is off too. I don't agree with the Romans, right? But this isn't right yet. And so these conversations are had to try and, understand government better, justice, to really be able to look directly at, okay, this is what the apostles were doing, this is what the Messiah was doing. There was many times where the Messiah turned down a debate, or it wasn't it he didn't speak much about about he didn't speak much about doctrinal points so much. It was more on virtue. Now that's not to say, because some things were already understood, because there's people who say the Messiah didn't speak about the alphabet community either. So I don't want to use that too loosely, but I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you this: I know growing up, when I was still being taught in different things, one scripture I would sometimes maybe not know how to appropriately digest was when the Son of Man returns, the watchmen of Zion will then agree, because and that was something, because it would, at the time, it was going against different understandings, because certain understandings is like, it's just us, you know what I'm saying, it's just us. But then it's like, okay, where does that come into play? And then maybe getting a fuller view, it's like it's like you know operating with the fruit of the spirit and sincere intentions. And obviously you want to know what's true. That's always going to be more advantageous to a people, spiritually, whatever the truth is according to the scriptures. But more than anything, it's like, being true intention and well intentioned, and not using ideologies to put batteries in our back, and can sometimes be used as fear mechanisms to keep people in a certain degree of control. So yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So yeah, if you have any last words, we coming up on 2 hours, and I'll share the link. To see if anybody wants to come on. I see a mod just came in, so actually I'm gonna share the link on the chat. If anybody wants to come on and speak, please just be mindful of your words. We don't want to speak against anyone, and be have on proper attire and clothing and things like that. But come on and speak with us if you have anything to say, any questions, and we would love the feedback. So I just shared the link if you would like to come on. So, but yeah, I always appreciate you coming on and speaking to the people, man, because these are the conversations that need to be had. And you're in Denver, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay, yeah, so that's about 8 hours from me. I used to go to Denver quite a bit for work. So yeah, bro, we'll be
Mhm.
linking up. I've been to Denver quite a few times. I know you there, but you're originally from New York, right?
Right, right.
Okay, yeah. That's how'd you end up in Denver?
Long story short, man, I got in some trouble as a youth.
Mm,
Um, you know, anybody who's from New York or has been there for an extensive amount of time knows that it's 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 very it's very easy to get in trouble there without the
mm,
proper guidance.
mm,
And one summer, I had got locked up, and my mom had already lived here. I lived in NY with my grandmother, and it was kind of like a Will Smith thing in Fresh Prince.
okay, okay,
She sent me out here to stay with my mom. So
okay. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's a blessing. Now you
Mhm.
went there, and brother, now you helping the people. So all praise to the Most High. All right.
Yes, sir. All praises. All
Yes,
praises.
sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Yep. So I just shared the link. And it looks like this weekend it was a little light, but yeah, we appreciate everyone tuning in on your Sabbath. You could have been doing anything, and if it's anything that you
Mhm.
all would like to see spoken about, if it's something that is in line with this particular uh, class or segment, pursuits of virtue, we would love to be able to go into it. So yeah, you can contact us at Men Going God's Way. I can actually share my personal email as well too. One brother reached out to me about information he would like to send, so I'm gonna put that in the chat as well. um Let me see here. Doc, do you have a personal channel that you would want to share?
Not as of yet.
Okay.
Still working on the branding, but
Okay.
once that's done, absolutely. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Men Going God's Way, it's different things we do. Obviously working out and just connecting, just connecting. So I'm gonna share my email here if it's different things you would like to see talked about, different ideas for this segment. We're growing, getting used to uh streaming and all that comes with it. So um let me see here. Let me type in my email. Yeah, yeah. All right, yeah. So, everyone, please, enjoy the rest of your Sabbath. It's been a good Sabbath, a good conversation. Again, I appreciate you, coming on to speak with me and,
Yes,
and,
sir.
and bring, edification to the stream. So everyone enjoy it. This has been another episode with Pursuits of Virtue. The true leader is servant. So everyone be blessed. Enjoy the rest of your Sabbath. And with that, we say shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Please accept me, pray you don't forget me, hope you don't reject me, I can come correctly. Please accept me, yeah. Please accept me, yeah. Please accept me, pray you don't forget me, hope you don't reject me, I can come correctly. Please accept me, yeah. Please accept me, yeah. Heart full of contrition, asking for forgiveness. I need your repentance. Made some bad decisions. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Heart full of contrition, I need your forgiveness. Asking for repentance. Made some bad decisions. Whoa, whoa. Please accept me, pray you don't forget me, hope you don't reject me, I can come correctly. Please accept me, yeah. Please accept me, yeah. Please accept me, pray you don't reject me, hope you don't forget me, I can come correctly. Oh, accept me, yeah. Accept me, yeah.
Please accept me. Pull up, won't forget me. Pull up, don't forget me. Pull up, don't reject me, no. Please accept me. I won't forget you. I just wanna accept you. You ain't got no dirt to come and running up.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Hand down, man down, face down, stay down, kick down, whip trying to pray you. Feet down, teeth down, seat down, whip down, kick down, I don't know what to say to you. Hand down, man down, face down, stay down, kick down, whip trying to pray you.